Thomas Partey and his future at Arsenal. Let's discuss it because a lot of fans have been calling for him to get a new deal. Of course, because he's been brilliant in midfield this season. I think, though, Declan Rice has been sensational in 2025. If you're talking about the whole campaign, Thomas Partey has been Arsenal's best midfielder and was brilliant against Real Madrid. Such a shame we don't have him for the PSG home leg. And a lot of the conversation is, what do we do for that one game at home against PSG without Partey? But what we want to talk about in this video is his situation in terms of a new contract, where his next club will be, and what's actually going on at Arsenal. Because there have been a few little bits of reports and rumours and murmurs and things that are giving us a little bit of insight into this. It felt, and I've been very much talking about Thomas Partey as, alongside Jorginho, leaving this summer. No signs of a new deal. It's the 23rd of April. There is little over a month of football left. Normally you get an idea for what's going on with these players' futures. Jorginho, I know, has been talking, I say I know like I'm an ITK. I don't. But there have been reports that, I think Flamengo in Brazilian football has been sort of discussed and move him. But with Thomas Partey, there's not been quite as much. The Atletico Madrid did come up. So let's talk about it all. Now, the reason I want to discuss it is because Charles Watts, who is typically very reliable on... Well, it's funny, actually. He's not only very reliable on transfer stuff when he does come out with transfer updates, but he's actually very reliable on the Thomas Partey front in particular. It was Charles Watts who broke the news, and yes, we give full credit to AFC Val. It was Charles Watts who was the first sort of credible journalist, like known journalist, who came out on deadline day of summer of 2020 and said, Arsenal have made contact, or Arsenal have made a move for Atletico Madrid's Thomas Partey. And AFC Bell had been talking about this. ITK, we had no idea who they were, where they were based, what was going on. So, had been saying all summer that Arsenal were going to go for this player. And then Charles Watts goes, it's true. So he's been at the forefront of the kind of Partey transfer saga in and out of Arsenal. And this is what he had to say on his YouTube channel. Everyone go subscribe, I'm sure you are anyway. He said, the expectation has been that Thomas Partey will leave at the end of the season. But as far as I'm aware, there is a feeling maybe that Arsenal are actually now willing to enter into negotiations about an extension. But that has not happened yet. This is aggregated by... Oh, I've lost it. I think it was AFC stuff. Hold on. It was AFC stuff. They're putting a lot of emphasis on the not bit there. So no conversation started, but maybe Arsenal are sort of changing their mind potentially. He carries on. There is a sense from people that I have spoken to that there is a bit of change and Arsenal would potentially be open to keeping him. Whereas before, the feeling within Partey's side was this isn't going to happen. Arsenal aren't open for discussions. So, I could just repeat the words again, but paraphrasing what is a pretty succinct, explanation on Charles Watts' side is basically, up to very recently, the feeling was from Partey's side, and Partey's camp, I imagine, Arsenal weren't open for conversations, but there's a feeling that maybe Arsenal are now willing to enter the conversations. Some Arsenal fans have been pushing for this, others haven't. I think some people think, maybe time to move on. Obviously, there's lots of discussion about the Zubimendi deal, but Thomas Partey could be offered a new deal. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about it. The midfield needs a bit of a revamp anyway, with Jorginho leaving, Rice seemingly playing this box-to-box 8. I think you're in this position where, is Vieira the answer as a backup to Ødegaard? Does Ødegaard need someone to be pushing him? And then Waneri probably plays in the front three a little bit more. I still think even if Partey stays, you're looking at maybe two midfielders to come in. But maybe I'm being a little bit greedy there. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Now, I think a lot of it will depend, not just what Arsenal want to do. I don't think it's a case of if Arsenal offer a deal, then it's kind of done. I think it's about other clubs that come in. Atletico Madrid, who he played for. He'd be very comfortable in Spain. He'd be very comfortable playing Atletico Madrid. He's played there and lived there before. This was the update from Atletico Goonerverse, and they were quoting David Medina, or probably David Medina, who's actually followed by Sidlow. So whatever that tells you, maybe there's some sort of I can't say I'm familiar with this word, but maybe that is some sort of stamp of authority, if that makes sense. Don't really know what I'm saying, but you get my point. So he said this on 17th of April, so about 6 days ago. Justin, Thomas Partey's return to Atletico Madrid is becoming increasingly likely. His performance last night at the Bernabeu has only pushed the club to go all in for his signing in the coming months. Atleti want him to be the anchor around which to build next season's project. It's funny, you don't normally talk about building around a 30-plus-year-old when you talk about a project, but the game has evolved so much. Players are playing to 33, 34, 35 comfortably at times. So there you go. So like I said, you can look at this from Arsenal's perspective of, do Arsenal want to keep him or not? You can look at it from Partey's perspective of, how's his time at Arsenal been? I think largely when he has played, his performances have been very, very good. I mean, if you're talking from day one to today, yes, there have been moments, but I mean, you could say that for almost every player. Largely, though, you're talking about someone who's delivered a very, very high level for the £45 million we've signed. And the big, drawback, people talking about injuries and stuff and availability on the pitch. There's, does he engage as physically as a Declan Rice? Sometimes that's been asked. Does Zubimendi necessarily add that? Probably not. So you're talking about still having a six that gets on the ball and plays. Zubimendi gives you that, but does Declan Rice? Probably not. Do you want both? You want Zubimendi and Partey so you can manage Partey's minutes? Listen, it would cost nothing but a new contract to re-sign Partey. How much would it cost to maybe bring in another central midfielder? It is another question Arsenal will think about. Would love to know your thoughts. My thing with the midfield, I did a video on Oyhan Sanset yesterday on the Goonerverse. And of course, by the way, today there'll be a match report post-Palace on the Goonerverse. So look at that too. But my thing on Arsenal's midfield is, if Rice as the 8 is the long-term future, look, I wanted that when we signed him. So I don't want to I'm not going to sit here and say that I hate that idea. And do I see the value in having a more naturally kind of metronome style 6 who just kind of controls a game of football? Can Rice do that? I think he does it better than people give him credit for. But is it his real game? Probably not. So I understand and hear all that. I think my thing is, we still need a variety in terms of, Rice is one type of 6, but Partey and Zubimendi are another. Marino is very good at invading space as a box-to-box. But as a left 8, could you get an Ødegaard there with a little bit more guard, a little bit deeper in build-up? Can you at least have maybe a 10 in the squad like a Sanset that allows you to mix that up? And if Ødegaard is going to play as the right 8 and he's always going to have that position, could you get more of the Smith Rowe type left 8? And I think Arteta's always wanted to go for that. But as people have rightly pointed out to me, James, it hasn't worked. But is that more because of the player than the profile? I've seen that style of midfield dominate in Europe, dominate in the Premier League, in fact. So I don't really know why Arsenal have struggled to kind of find that balance. And I think everyone talks about the front line needing a rebuild, and I get it. Whether it's a Gyökeres or Watkins, by the way, that Watkins stuff's looking a little bit more likely, isn't it? But whoever it is from that perspective, you need the 9. You probably need a left winger. Nico Williams, absolutely top target there. And I think the more I see of him, the more you go, yeah, I mean, that is the standout candidate. Can play left and right and all that. Good with both feet. But I would say that midfield, I think if you go in with the same options, even if you go in with the same options this season, but it's like Zubimendi for Jorginho, yeah, of course it's stronger because you've got Zubimendi instead of Jorginho. But I don't think we've really addressed the issues we have in midfield, which is kind of real game-breaking quality on the ball, real kind of relentless creativity, high-output midfielders. I think Ødegaard and Rice have decent output, and I think Ødegaard has that kind of pass in him. But it's why I'm talking about the Oyhan Sansets of the world. People have mentioned Morgan Rogers, people have mentioned Morgan Gibbs-White, people have mentioned Florian Wirtz, but I don't see us getting him, unfortunately, and others in the comment section of that video. And look, I think ultimately we need a right-footed, creative, more thrust type of attacking midfielder. I don't think we quite have that. So does keeping Thomas Partey or Jorginho, but obviously it's looking much more likely Thomas Partey, and he's been much better than Jorginho this season, does keeping Partey mean that if you do Zubimendi, there's actually a little bit more to go on those other players? I don't know. Maybe it means you don't do Zubimendi so that you can go get that more rounded or creative type midfielder. I don't know. We're just going to wait and see how Arsenal respond. What I would say, though, is I'd like Arsenal to have clarity. What's the change of heart with Partey because of the performances? He's been playing at this level all season. So I think Arsenal need some clarity, and Berta and Arteta need some clarity very quickly of what they want to do with their midfield next season. Is Vieira going to get a part there? Or on our second opportunity, third opportunity maybe, is one area a long-term creative midfielder in this team, or is he a final third player? I think Versatility is a great thing, and options are a great thing. That's what I want in this midfield, absolutely. But I think Arsenal need some clarity on how they're going to approach that if we're going to have a fast start to the summer. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like I said, match report coming out later on the Goonerverse. Catch you all very soon.